On This Week in Enterprise Tech, VMware is getting pwned, a toy company has a brand new EULA for you big boys, and Apple is fighting for your right to privacy. Twy it on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. Hi, everybody. It's time for our annual audience survey. We'd really like to hear from you. It helps us understand our audience better, know what you like and don't like, how you listen to the show. It also helps us tell advertisers what kind of people listen. But I promise you, your feedback is always kept personally anonymous. All you have to do is visit twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. It'll just take a few minutes, and it'll help us make Twit even better. We really appreciate your support and any help you can give us. twit.tv/survey.
This is Twy it. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 178. Recorded February 19th, 2016 for February 26th, 2016. EULAs, encryption, and other useless things. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Citrix GoToWebinar. Connect and convert qualified leads with GoToWebinar, the leading platform for engaging online events. For a 30-day free trial, visit gotowebinar.com today. And by IT Pro TV. Update your brain for 2016. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep your IT skills up to date with engaging and informative video tutorials. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, go to itpro.tv/enterprise and use the code Enterprise30. Welcome to Twy it. This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But of course, I don't guide you by myself. I bring along a cast of competent characters. And I'm going to start with Mr. Lou Maresca. He is a senior lead at Microsoft. You may know him from his time as my co-host on Coding 101. Of course, he was actually, Lou, it was episode 3 of Twy it, right? I mean, you were actually in the studio in the Bay Area.
Yeah, way back in the beginning now.
Way back in the day. And, sir, how are you? It's been a while, I think 2 weeks since we've had you on the show as one of the co-hosts. It's good to have you back. Yeah,
it's great to be back. It's one of those days that I really wish that there was something else to do, so here we go.
Yeah, well, that's our motto, Twy it. It's something else to do. Speaking of something else to do, we've got Brian Chee, the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory, who is fondling Grommet for some reason. I'm not really sure why. But Cheebert, what's up with you?
Me, I'm just learning Modbus and all that kind of fun and game. We're designing our own power control systems so we can control inverters and meters and stuff like that.
An enterprise man at heart. Well, gents, we've got a good show for our audience today. Not only will we be doing a couple of blips and a bite, but we're going to be bringing in Jonathan Sander. He is the Vice President of Product Strategy for Lieberman Software. He's going to talk to us about a story you may have heard about. It's getting a little bit of play in the news about Apple versus the FBI and the DOJ. It might have a couple of implications for those folks who live in the IT world. But before we do that, let's go ahead and jump into the blips. Now, let me ask you a question. Are you building out your urban network? If so, you may want to check out Radwin's new Jet Base Station. It's the newest member of their broadband wireless access portfolio. With a beamforming antenna, the Jet 750 base station can deliver, they say, 750 megabits per second per client over the 5 gigahertz band in dense urban zones and high interference environments. Using a narrow beam delivery and dynamic channel bandwidth, Radwin claims that the Jet 750 will allow for a consistent, high-throughput connection with high enough quality for a service-level agreement. That's unheard of for wireless. In other words, if you deploy networks in areas where wireless is a crapshoot, you may now have a weapon against RF congestion.
The FCC deputizes cable companies. Unlock the Box is a recent proposal by federal regulators which allows third-party companies to develop alternatives to traditional set-top boxes. FCC voted 3 to 2 to move forward this past Thursday. In the proposal, the FCC also required that these 3 third-party companies who create the set-top boxes must obey the same privacy rules that the cable companies do. This sounds reasonable, but then it gets a bit odd when they explain how it will be regulated. The proposal to ensure that third parties obey the privacy rules is that to have the cable companies be responsible for it. The reason is the current regulations are only in place for cable companies and not for tech companies like Google and Microsoft of the world. Set-top boxes could collect massive amounts of PII, or personal identifiable info, that could be sold off. FCC would require cable companies to supply content only if third-party set-top boxes abide by the same privacy rules, such as the Title VI standards. Enforcement is going to be very hard. According to the FCC, it doesn't have a plan yet. As quoted, the FCC doesn't have any answers on how privacy certification would work. Basically, it's impossible to monitor and enforce. Although a great idea to open up competition and innovation, confidence in the privacy rules described in the proposal have yet to set in.
So I've got an attaboy for Congressman Ted Lieu, a Democrat out of Los Angeles County, who issued the following statement regarding the Apple court order. The terrorist act in San Bernardino was horrific, and the tragic loss of innocent lives demand a strong response. I have several deep concerns, however, about the unprecedented court order that forces Apple to create software it does not have in order to provide a backdoor way to weaken its smartphone encryption system. This FBI court order, by compelling a private sector company to write new software, is essentially making that company an arm of law enforcement. Private sector companies are not and should not be an arm of government or law enforcement. Hey, Congressman Lieu, I'll vote for you.
Hey, business travelers. Microsoft just upped the game for hotel monitors. If you watched the Twy It Holiday special, you know that I'm a fan of the Microsoft Wireless Display Adapter, which allows Wintel systems, as well as some Android devices, to wirelessly connect to HDMI-equipped monitors at distances up to 40 feet. It's a fantastic companion to every business traveler who wants an easy way to use hotel TVs as a second display while on the road, or for presentations without a mess of cables. Now, if you were intrigued by the tech but unwilling to pull the trigger, Microsoft might have something to push you over the edge. They've just released the next version of the adapter, and it looks to be a winner. At roughly the same size and price as the original, $50, the new wireless display adapter offers all the same Miracast goodness, but with one big improvement: a vastly reduced lag. While hardcore Twitch gamers will probably still not be happy with the adapter, the lag is all but unnoticeable for most business users. The adapter will be available at the Microsoft Store, Amazon, and Best Buy, so go treat yourself to some travel gear.
2D semiconductor material paves the way for blazing fast processors. Semiconductors made of tin oxygen, or tin monoxide, is a layer of 2D material only 1 atom thick, allowing for electrical charges to move through possibly almost 100 times faster than 3D materials like silicon. Silicon is currently 3D because it contains multiple layers on top of a glass substrate, but due to the multiple layers, electrons are not as efficient because they tend to bounce around inside. With 2D materials, electrons have no room to party, causing less friction or less heat, less power, and allowing for faster interconnects. Graphene and other 2D materials are also being researched, but they only allow for N-type or negative electrons to move. For processing electronics, you need semiconductor material for both negative N-type and positive P-type charged electrons. This would make tin monoxide the first P-type or positive type 3D semiconductor material today, and opens the door to the exciting process of manufacturing transistors using both the N-type and new P-type materials. Devices now have room to have even longer battery life and have even more processing power than ever before. To me, the age of mobile computing really only has begun.
Well, Backblaze has published their hard disk reliability report for this year, and HGST is again at the top of the list. Considering the Hitachi folks have a ton of heritage from big iron mainframe storage world, it doesn't come as too big a surprise that HGST is again considered the tops in reliability on this year's Backblaze disk reliability report. What's odd is that HGST is owned by Western Digital, who unfortunately is on the other side of the reliability graph in the very same report. Perhaps Western Digital needs some design and manufacturing lessons from the HGST side of the house.
Hey, are you one of those unfortunate developers who were laid off by VMware during their restructuring? If so, there's an upcoming opportunity for you to supplement your income and perhaps indulge in a little schadenfreude, some delectatio morosa. In other words, some good old-fashioned revenge. Pwn to Own is returning in March, and one of the bigger bounties is being offered to those who can exploit a VMware virtual machine. Specifically, contestants can win $75,000 if they can escape from a virtual machine into the hypervisor. The reward is in addition to various bounties being offered for exploiting Google Chrome, $65,000, Microsoft Edge, $65,000, Adobe Flash in Microsoft Edge, $60,000, and Safari on OS X, $40,000. Furthermore, if the attacker can achieve root-level code execution, a bonus of $20,000 will be tacked on to the reward. While Twit TV and the Catholic Church would never encourage the willful destruction of intellectual property, if you are a former VMware engineer who has been holding on to a 0-day or two, a payout of $285,000 might make your restructuring a little more peaceful. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, we're going to be jumping into the bites. Specifically, what happens when a company decides that they're not going to take responsibility for being breached. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and it's got to be GoToWebinar. Now, if you are responsible for getting the word out about your company, about evangelizing, about showing people what your products and services can do, you know how important it is to choose the right provider to do your webinars. It's a challenging conversation to make sure that everyone's tech is in the right place and to make sure that the presentation goes over well and to make sure that you keep everyone engaged. And that's why we're so happy to have Citrix GoToWebinar as a supporter of the Twilight Riot. A GoToWebinar lets you present to hundreds of potential clients with confidence, letting you connect, captivate, and convert your target audience in one go. Now, here's how it works. You pick your topic, you select your audience, and you schedule your event. No, really, that's it. That's all. That's not a typo. That's the full step list that you need to take with GoToWebinar. They take care of everything else with automated emails, custom branding, and practice sections. Now, speaking of practice sessions, this is one of my favorite parts of the solution. If you've ever tried using unified communications to present to multiple endpoints, you know the buzzkill, the frustration that is tech support during a presentation. Nothing kills your pitch like having half an hour of tech issues before you can go. But with GoToWebinar, your audience can test ahead of time so that they're ready when the time comes to be concerned about nothing else but you and your company. Of course, it doesn't stop with prepping your audience for the presentation. During the event, GoToWebinar will keep track of your audience and keep them engaged with interactive polls, live chat, and real-time feedback. And once the event is over, you get instant one-click registration, attendance, and performance metrics, so you know how you did. Basically, GoToWebinar enables marketers like you to easily reach out to your target audience and turn leads into customers. Folks, if you are concerned with the evangelization of your company, it's time to get started with GoToWebinar today to connect and convert. Visit gotowebinar.com to start your free 30-day trial. That's gotowebinar.com for your free 30-day trial. And we thank GoToWebinar for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Folks, we've got a different kind of story, not a story we would normally cover on This Week in Enterprise Tech, because it's about a toy company and how a toy company may actually have a little something for the big boys. Now, let's start off by making this little disclaimer. All companies will be breached. That's just the nature of our jobs. I don't care how much money you're spending on security. I don't care what kind of security practices you've put into play. At some point, because data will escape, unless the machine does no longer exist, everyone will be breached in some way, shape, or form. And what we've come to know is it's how companies deal with that breach that will determine whether or not we can restore trust. Well, some companies that suffer breaches will double or triple down on security, which is good. Some will announce new measures to keep data secure in the future. That's also good. And some companies go to the extraordinary length of making sure that their customers are reimbursed in some way for the data that has been taken from them. But now we've got a different strategy. Just to change the terms of service to state that your customers will accept that their data is not secure if they give it to you. That's exactly what VTech, maker of electronic gadgets and children's toys, have done with their latest EULA. Now, they had their network breached last fall. The breach affected 11 million accounts, including 6 million children's accounts. And that data included name, gender, birthday, headshot, chat logs, email addresses, passwords, personally identifying information, IP addresses, and physical addresses. It was really the mother lode of information. Now, in response, VTech, without disclosing any other security changes that they may have made, changed one sentence in their EULA, and it is, quote, "You acknowledge and agree that any information you send or receive during your use of the site may not be secure and may be intercepted or later acquired by unauthorized parties," unquote. Take a moment. Yeah, just take a moment. I'm going to start off with you, Cheebert, because I don't know if this is bold, stupid, or somewhere in between. Is this a proper response to a breach?
It's either really, really smart or let's short VTech.
Exactly. Well, the funny thing is, immediately after the breach, they did launch a new service where they asked more people to sign up. And from what I've heard, they haven't really beefed up security. Now, okay, let's have it out. This is kind of funny. Let's listen to Troy Hunt. He is one of the Microsoft MVPs who actually found the breach originally. And he said that he found 4 major vulnerabilities in the VTech system. One, they were not using SSL encryption anywhere. So in no way, shape, or form was your data protected in transit. So even if the system wasn't breached, someone who was playing man in the middle would be able to read everything in plain text. 2, VTech was using a farm of unpatched SQL servers that were vulnerable to SQL injection. 3, VTech uses outdated web frameworks that can't be patched, so it's not a matter of them wanting to patch it, it's just they're too old, they're no longer supported. And the 4th one was that they were making direct object reference mistakes. In other words, they were allowing you to change global variables, which is a very, very bad thing, especially over the internet. Now, they haven't really fixed those issues. They've done a few things to keep those issues from being directly accessible on the internet, but they haven't really changed their business model. Lou, it's easy to make fun of them, but then I got to ask, once we get past the shock of a company essentially saying, yeah, anything you give to us is probably going to be stolen, is this a company being stupid, or is this just a company being honest?
I think there's a fine line between that, right? I guess you could say that they're being honest in a way, but in the same sense, they're basically telling consumers that they're not willing to put forth extra dollars and cents, cogs against things, to maintain security of particular data. So, like, for instance, my son has a Leapfrog device. You know, he takes pictures of our family and around the house. And if that data is not secured, then it makes me wonder what I should be doing with that device. Maybe I should shut it down and not use it, not put my credit card information in there and let them buy apps, right? So I think that's the thing. To me, I think it's stupid. I don't think it's actually showing them that they're being honest. I think it's just being stupid, and they're basically saying we don't care, and nobody could be 100% secure. Sure, well, at least somewhat secure though. At least try, at least put forth an effort. So let's hope that they do that. And if they do that, then I'd say yes, they are being honest. They are trying, but at least they're being honest that it might not work.
And so, Cheebert, I'll just ask the same question of you, stupid or honest? So from Lou, it's definitely stupid. How about you?
Oh, no, stupid. Sorry.
Trying to come up with the honest justification, but no, not so much. Here's the thing, though. I'm with you. I think it's stupid. In fact, there's a quote here from VTech rep Grace Pang. She's the head of their corporate marketing department. She tried to spin the sentence by saying, and again, quote, "No company that operates online can provide a 100% guarantee that it won't be hacked. The Learning Lodge terms and condition," that's the product that got hacked, "like the terms and conditions for many online sites and services, simply recognizes that fact by limiting the company's liability for acts of third parties such as hackers. Such limitations are commonplace on the web," unquote. So that actually puts me, even though I think this is stupid, and even though I think it's ridiculous for them to put their effort into this rather than just upgrading the archaic system that is just broken right now, there's a part of me that says, no, you know what? Every EULA should contain something like this. I'm not saying that this is how you respond to a breach, but I think everyone should start getting used to the fact that if you put any piece of information online, you should assume that at some point it will be stolen. Is my read wrong on that, Cheebert?
No, it's not. There are many, many, many times when a corporation wants me to sign up for a service or something, anything. And they start asking me things like, for instance, I really hate that a lot of corporations want my full birthday, including the year. Because once, that's just one little, crack in the wall, so to speak. And I don't like that. I think, one, yeah, it's inevitable. But two, I think it would be a really good idea for companies to stop asking for so much PII. You know, there's no reason why a toy company really needs all that. You know, at the most, they would need the kids' day and month, not the year. Don't you agree?
I agree, but at the same time, I understand the mind of the executive or the marketing person who's saying, but that information is valuable, and if they'll give it to us in exchange for a service, then why wouldn't we take it? Let me play devil's advocate. I'm going to play the jerk here, and I'm going to throw this over to you, Lou.
Okay.
I could see in this framework someone saying, no, VTech, even though they messed up with security, and obviously they need to improve that, they're the honest ones. And the dishonest ones are the corporations that are saying, no, we're going to protect your data, knowing full well that they can't, knowing full well that they are just one vulnerability from being breached just as bad as VTech. And so in that sense, they're encouraging this mindset that at some point you can be safe on the internet, where VTech is saying, no, you can't.
Yeah, I guess you could spin it like that. I guess, you know, there are companies that, for instance, if they reluctant, like, you know, most companies, there's an old saying in security, and you've been to a bunch of security conferences before. It's to say, just assume you've been breached, because like you said, at some point you're going to get breached. At some point, just assume that you are, and that's how you should attack the problem. And you know, a lot of companies do that, but a lot of companies, if they were honest about the fact that they were breached already, like for instance, banks. Like if you were Bank of America and you said, "Hey, I've been breached," or if you were a health organization, like where you stored all your health information, or you know, that type of thing. To me, by them being honest, you could generate almost pandemonium in the industry around, "Hey, where is my stuff gone?" And so I think that at some point, yes, companies have to attempt at the very best to make things secure, and say that they are secure, and provide that type of security to somebody so that they feel safe about what they're doing in order to move forward, in order to innovate and move forward. But again, it's one of those things: is how secure are they, and how safe is your data? And so by the VTech doing this, they're basically saying we're never going to go into those industries, and if we do, you shouldn't trust us.
Okay, well said. Yeah, don't trust us. Cheebert, this harkens back to a talk that the two of us watched 2 years ago at Black Hat with Gear, where he basically said the same thing that we're saying. You're going to get hacked. You will be breached. He thinks where we need to focus is on the reporting of breaches. His thing was 100% transparent failure. When you get breached, you should be responsible for reporting the breach in a timely fashion. So in that sense, VTech is actually okay. Yeah, I mean, because they did report the breach, and they are making an honest effort, even though it's kind of stupid and lame and horrible, an honest effort to tell the customers that you will meet failure on our network.
Yeah.
No?
This is one
Not
of those
buying?
things where, what?
Not buying, not no.
I don't know. It's really hard. Because, yeah, I really do want them. I do agree with Dan Gear, and I do agree that you should report it quickly. That way people have a chance to actually do something about it. But the whole issue of, oh, my God, that was a really stupid way of setting up your network. And someone doing something that stupid and that far away from acceptable practices should be punished. You know, they've basically put everybody's privacy way, way, way behind profit, which is all fine and good. You know, everybody is entitled to profit. But if you're not going to make even a lame attempt, I mean, this is beyond lame. My freshman computer science students could do better than this. You know, if they're not even going to make a decent attempt at securing PII, they shouldn't be allowed to be in business.
Okay, actually, good point here. If they're not able to secure PII, they shouldn't be in business, or they shouldn't have the PII in the first place.
Totally.
So actually that goes into a corollary question, which is who owns the data? This is not a question that we've been able to answer to my satisfaction on the show before when we've talked about breaches. Yes, companies feel bad when they get caught losing customer information, but aside from fines, sometimes there's no prosecution. There's no major consequences other than the fact that their customers don't trust them for a while. But if I owned my data and someone lost my data, I am owed to be made whole. That doesn't happen right now. So, Cheever.
You know what I think? I think I'm going to write my own personal end user license agreement that anyone that wants my PII must agree to. And I'm going to have retribution in there if they lose it. How's that sound?
You might want to talk to Vetman in the chat room who has he says, wait a minute, you mean like that EULA that you accept even though it's inside the plastic wrap so you can't accept it until you've already opened up the package? Is that the kind of EULA you're going to be making, Cheever?
Actually, I like the one that someone else had scrolled off the screen, that by breathing, you accept the ramifications of the toxic and pollution in the air.
Yeah. We live in a EULA world. Lou, I want to throw it to you before we move on here. Obviously, you work for a large corporation that does have a lot of personally identifiable customer information. It does have a lot of experience with security, has a lot of experience with making sure that everything is segmented. In fact, some may say that Microsoft, in some aspects, does represent best practices of data security and data what do you call that, sanity. What is your take on this? Would Microsoft, do you think, ever move to a EULA that does this, that says we will make our best effort not to lose your data, but if we do, you can't sue us?
You know, I actually can't say that. I don't know if they ever would. I mean, I know that it depends on what organization you're in, what group you're in. Like, for instance, I'm in the C&E group, part of Azure. You know, businesses put their data in there. I mean, I can't imagine Microsoft not making 100% effort toward, or 1,000% effort of trying to make sure that data is secure all the time and reduce the risk of breach. So I don't think that it'll ever change there. But I mean, it could be some of the other divisions. Who knows? You know, I have no privy to any information here. But you know, maybe if they, you know, create the HoloLens, it might have something like that, right? And who knows? It could depend on whatever device. But I don't see it in most of the businesses that are in today.
I think the best summary is from Loquacious One in the chat room, who says that the best EULA sentence you can have is "stuff happens." There we go. We've fixed it. Well, folks, it's that time. We need to talk about Apple. I know a lot of you are a little bit weary because this topic has been dragging on for 2 weeks now, and yeah, it's still important. And yes, it's still vitally important that we talk about it because it does affect what we do, what we love, IT, and our personal privacy. So when we come back, we're going to be jumping back into the Apple kerfuffle along with Jonathan Sander. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and it's IT Pro TV. Now, I know that there are a lot of people, because we get emails about this all the time and tweets, who want to jump into the IT world. And there are those people who are already in the IT world who would like to keep their knowledge current. Well, in the past, there were a couple of ways you could do that. You could maybe get an internship. You could hang around with your IT friends, maybe take a certification course or two, and those are good things to do. But if you want a consistent way to improve your IT standing, to get into the world of IT, or maybe just make sure that you're always current, well, that's what IT Pro TV can do for the Dwight Wright. IT Pro TV is a video network that's dedicated to the world of information technology. Whether you're looking to jumpstart your career or you're already working in the field, they supplement traditional learning methods in a fun and engaging way. It maximizes your learning and prepares you for your certification exams. They offer over 1,000 hours of content, and they're adding 50 hours each week. They have an extensive library covering A+, CCNA, MCSA, ethical hacking, AWS, virtualization, security and cryptography, desktop and server support for OS X, Windows, and Linux, and that's just the start. I'm running out of breath. Their new courses right now include Cloud Plus and Active Directory in Azure, plus Cisco ASA Security Express with Tom Lamley. If you're studying with a book or enrolled in a certification or technical degree program, IT Pro TV is a fantastic supplement to learn at your own pace and track your progress. And it's much cheaper than a boot camp. IT Pro TV even includes more than 100 step-by-step virtual machine labs and transcender practice exams, a $109 value. They offer a low monthly subscription rate with a no-hassle cancellation policy because they're confident that you're going to find their content compelling, relevant, and continuously useful for your IT life. They also offer you transcripts that let you follow from start to finish or jump right to any part of any video. And it's also an excellent ongoing resource, always producing up-to-date content to keep your skills sharp and current. With their client list filled with names like Harvard, MIT, UCSD, and Stanford, and with corporate and group pricing available, you really don't have a reason not to try out itpro.tv. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to check out itpro.tv/enterprise to upgrade your brain with the most popular IT certifications. Premium subscriptions are normally $57 a month or $570 per year, but we have a special offer because they love the Twy It Riot. Try it free. That's right, free for 7 days when you sign up using our code Enterprise30 to check out their courses, live stream, and more. You'll also receive 30% off the lifetime of your account. That's less than $40 per month or $399 for the entire year. That's itpro.tv/enterprise, itpro.tv/enterprise. Use the code Enterprise30 to try it free for 7 days and save 30%. On a personal note, I want to congratulate Rodolfo, part of the Twit Army, who learned about itpro.tv on the Twit network. Within a few months of subscribing to ITPro TV, he had the skills and certification needed to land a new job as a system admin at a better company for double the pay. Congrats, Rodolfo, and everyone else follow up on his example. And we thank ITPro TV for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's jump to it. We know that this is still a contentious issue, and we know that some people are a little bit upset that we continue to cover it, but we have to do our jobs, and we have to make sure you stay abreast to the most important issues of the day. And one of those issues is covered by Mr. Jonathan Sander. Jonathan, thank you very much for coming on to This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Thank you, Patrick.
Now, you are the VP of Product Strategy for Lieberman Software Corporation. Can you quickly describe what is Lieberman Software?
We protect administrative credentials. That's what it boils down to. And all their forms for enterprises, all these threats you've been talking about, all this assumed breach, none of it means anything if the bad guys can't get their hands on privileged credentials, and that's what we try to stop. That's the short.
So you protect the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, basically.
Got it. Okay. Now, we've brought you in specifically because you have been doing a lot of research in the area that is currently under fire. Apple, master key encryption, the FBI, warrants, law, all that fun stuff that we've been talking about for 2 weeks. Tell me really quickly, where do you stand? Give me the 10-second summary, and then we can dive in.
Wow. It's hard to sum this one up in 10 seconds.
I'll take 20 seconds.
I was about to say, there's a lot of different sides. I think the most interesting part of the story right now is that everyone's talking about how Apple's being forced to create net new software and how egregious that is and how bad for privacy that is. And I don't disagree with any of that, but it's sort of magical how the story has gotten away from the fact that, hey, wait a second, Apple can create this software, which means everyone who thought that their data was somehow secure on their Apple device, well, clearly they're wrong, right? Because even if the government shouldn't have the right to demand it, did we really think that we wanted Apple to have the right to give it away at the government's demand? And that's the fascinating part to me, is that, you know, everyone's beating up on the government about this. Apple's kind of getting a free pass. Today, I don't know if you saw the latest, right? The FBI came back and made some pretty stern comments about basically Apple siding with terrorists if they don't comply with this order. So they're definitely trying to turn it around. But that's the most interesting part to me, is that people have not, they love their iPhones so much that they're not willing to see Apple as a bad guy or even a potential bad guy.
Right, right. And actually, that is one of the hidden stories, because we know that in 2014, Apple did announce that they went to full device encryption. And they made the statement, the bold statement, that not even Apple can break back into the device. It was one of the selling points. This is the most secure device that we have on the market, period. We do have Slow-Mo in the chat room who's saying, well, there was a difference because we're talking about an iPhone 5C. Security got tighter with a 5S. Right. But still, the response of Apple is a little bit puzzling, because it does sound as if they're saying, we don't want to create the solution, but we could. Whereas I think most people, if they thought about it, they'd say, no, when I bought it, they told me that they couldn't do anything. It's completely inaccessible. The technology would never exist to be able to break into this phone. So what's going on here?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right, at the end of the day, it's all software. That's the thing that makes this really interesting, because your commenter is absolutely correct, right? The newer versions of the iPhone have got an HSM inside them that makes them a lot more secure. And so precisely what they're being asked to do, what Apple's being asked to do, is really only possible because it's an older iPhone, and they can essentially redo the OS in a way that takes advantage of the poorer security of the older phone. But even on the new phone, the whole notion of having to jailbreak it for apps, the whole notion of having to or being able to essentially install other things on it means that there is still the possibility for Apple to be holding essentially master keys that can do things that only they would have access to. And sure, they made it a little harder on themselves with the HSM and the newer security, but ultimately it's their world and you're living in it when it comes to using that platform. And by the way, we're talking about Apple because it's Apple. It's not like they're the only ones in that position, right? I mean, it's not like Google's got a halo in all of this. It's just that they're not the ones that have the subpoena in front of them right now. And I think, earlier, I forget exactly who said it, but somebody said that there could be pandemonium if people realized how much of their privacy was up for grabs. I think it was during the VTech story. Maybe there's a need for pandemonium. I mean, that's the thing. I think, if anything, maybe this story has the teeth to actually wake people up to the fact that they're really putting themselves out there with very little protection, especially from the people who they're giving themselves to so willingly, like Apple.
Actually, that is a great point, and we can make a call back to that, because one of the issues here, and this is a little strange, but consider this. Law enforcement doesn't like the fact that these devices are getting encrypted because they got so accustomed to having a bonanza of investigative data handed to them. That's when smartphones started coming out and people's lives were ending up on the devices. It was a treasure trove. It was, no, I don't have to investigate. I got your phone. I know what you've done for the last 4 years. That's going away. And so they want that back, even though they didn't used to have that. It begs the question, okay, if you are so concerned about the government breaking into your phone, into your private devices, I got to ask the question, why do you have that information on those devices? Would you carry around a USB flash drive with all your deepest, darkest secrets, knowing that at any point it could fall out of your pocket? You probably wouldn't. So why would you do the same thing on your phone?
If it could summon Uber, I bet people would.
Well, and now we're getting to the exchange. I'm exchanging some of my security. I'm exchanging some of my rights in order to get a convenience that I really, really want. And we'll talk about that when we bring in the other host. But let's get back to the story. I want to bring it back to the tech, because the politics get crazy, and we will cover some of the politics because it's funny to watch people who know nothing about technology trying to mandate technology solutions. But what we're talking about here is there is full disk encryption. So the data is encrypted. There supposedly is only a master key that exists on only that device that no one else should be able to have. That key will get destroyed by the device if too many false attempts are made to authenticate, which should render the device completely useless. However, the assistance that has been requested of Apple is a two-parter. One is to replace firmware on the device, and that firmware is it's the software that would destroy the master key.
Right.
But then they also need to come up with a software solution to push the firmware on a locked device. And I think that's the part that people should be freaking out about, because we didn't know that's possible. So let me ask you, how is that possible?
Well, again, it's all software, right? I mean, if you understand exactly how everything is architected at the lowest levels, which of course Apple does, they have the source, they wrote it, they have the people who created it, they're going to be able to figure out a way. And well, what's interesting is, right, we assume they're going to be figuring out a way. I actually, at dinner last night, was debating this with people, and one of the points someone made was, you can't really put genius to work at the end of a gunpoint. And the government is assuming that Apple can do this. Apple is pushing back on principle. I think we have to hold open the possibility that maybe they can't, right? But maybe because it's technically infeasible to, right? It's not because they secured it so well. It would probably be simply because, some other technicality. But I think from a technical standpoint, too, the other interesting piece that you just highlighted, right? Because you got all of that absolutely correct. The other piece is that it's always about the weakest part of a security system. And the weakest part in this case is going after that control of having too many swipes, too many attempts to unlock it, be the control that can actually destroy and basically brick the phone. They figured out, obviously these, the guys of the FBI, they're pretty clever. They figured out that that was the piece to go after. If they could just break that piece, then all the rest of the security falls with it, because essentially at that point it's meaningless without that control. So I think those are the interesting bits, right? They found the weakest part of the system. They want to have Apple help them exploit it. We assume Apple can do that, and it's probably a safe assumption because they've got the source. Use the source, Luke. I mean, if you've got it, you can probably accomplish it.
Right, and that's really the part that Apple doesn't want to let out. I was expecting Apple to say the smart thing in my mind would have been for them to say, well, we've already told you can't do that. That technology will never exist. We've designed this so well, not even we can break back in. But we do have a corollary question from Slow-Mo in the chat room. He wanted to know about the January 1st, 2016. That was that law about you could brick the phone. It was supposed to reduce the amount of phones that get stolen. That doesn't actually get you into the phone, and it doesn't actually brick the phone per se. It just keeps you from using the phone on a carrier in the United States. I can take one of those phones and go to another country and erase everything and reactivate it. Doesn't get me access to the data, but it just means that I can go someplace else and still use it as a phone. Jonathan, let me get back to you here. Okay, so we've kind of laid out what the technical landscape looks like. We've laid out that, yes, this is software, and Apple does have access to all the source code. So they can comb through it and find a vulnerability that maybe they didn't know about before and potentially come up with a way to do this. So, and I'm going to ask this question that we asked last week, why wouldn't they be amenable to doing a one-off? And a lot of people are screaming, well, this is the phone of a terrorist, and they have a warrant. So why wouldn't they just go into a locked room and open up this phone and give the data and be done with it and not make any theater?
Well, I mean, there's multiple levels to answer that question, right? I mean, obviously there's a marketing problem with doing it, right? And that's probably not the interesting conversation. I don't necessarily know. This is the one where I can't make a decision myself, right? This is exactly. It's funny. I had dinner last night in San Francisco with Andrew Nash, who's forgotten more about cryptography than I ever knew. He was at DEC and RSA and PayPal.
Right.
He wrote the book on PKI, and I'm going to guess you might have heard of the guy. And we were arguing about this back and forth. He was strongly against the notion of them doing a one-off, by the way. I couldn't commit either way because part of me, and we discussed my Jesuit heritage. I, went to 8 years of Jesuit school, got a strong respect for the law. And one would think that, you could find a lawful way to solve this with a one-off process. But the geek in me knows that that is the ultimate slippery slope, because if they do it this one time for this one phone with this really just cause, and they do have a just cause here, well, what happens when it's just 1 degree off of that just cause? And what happens when it's 2 degrees off of that just cause, and so on and so forth, right? You can see where it leads very quickly.
But is that specious? Is that specious? Because now it sounds as if, and I'm going back into the Jesuit paradigm, it's the whole, well, would you kill one person to create utopia? Okay, sure, one person. Okay, how about 10 people? How about 100 people? How about 1,000 people? Right. And of course, you're eventually going to get to that spot where you become squeamish. Your personal conscience, your morals, whatever, will kick in and say, no, I can't do that. But the slippery slope argument, It doesn't satisfy anymore. In fact, let me bring my co-host back in here because I want to get their take on this. Cheebert, we talked about this yesterday. I'm with Jonathan. I think, yeah, you got to be very careful about that first example, that first case that then becomes watered down and gets used again and again and again. But Cheebert, for you, where does the slippery slope start? Does it start with the first device?
Yes, I strongly believe it's the first device, because just look at what law enforcement's done with FISA and how they've kind of stretched it to fit this and stretched it to fit that. If you start even 1 degree, is my opinion, even 1 degree off, just a little bit, and you got to admit, the FBI cherry-picked their cases. They went for the case, the instance that is going to whip the public frenzy into a froth. And they're counting on public opinion to force Apple into doing this. And I don't think we should. This slope is one of those things with absolutely no friction, and even just one little bit off bubble is going to have a slide way down, and it's going to, in my opinion, be the beginning of the end of being able to trust any communications anywhere in the world. That's kind of what I think the stakes are.
All right. Lou, I want to bring you into the conversation here because I've got something special for you. All the rhetoric that has been building up around this, because who was it? You've got, just this morning, actually, you had the Republican senator from North Carolina, Richard Burr, who he gave this fiery, impassioned speech about how he's going to criminalize those companies who don't help the government to catch these criminals, these terrorists. He's backed off from that. He said, okay, well, I said criminalize, but I didn't really mean criminalize. I meant we're gonna penalize. We're gonna fine these companies. But you've also got the DOJ, who actually wants to step up the time frame. In fact, by the time this episode will air, because I'm in Barcelona right now, we will have passed the deadline for Apple to have explained why it is an unreasonable burden for them to unlock the phone. But the rhetoric that's been surrounding this has been, and let me paraphrase this, if your family was being held hostage by a madman and the only way for the FBI to find that madman was for them to unlock a phone, wouldn't you support unlocking it?
Well, sure. I mean, if you put it like that.
but
I mean, that's
but wait,
human.
but wait, Lou,
nature,
no,
right?
Liberty, freedom, right?
Well, it's all in perspective, right? I mean, if you're saying that if somebody's going to kill you unless you unlock the phone, obviously you're going to want them to unlock the phone, right? And regardless of whose liberty it is. But I think, in this perspective, I personally believe that Apple is doing this because they want to make sure that it's public so that they don't have to go down that slippery slope in the future, right? So if they say, oh, you did it once, now you got to do it again for us. At least they make it public and say, hey, public, guess what they're trying to make us do? We don't want to do it because of this. And so they're kind of pushing back on the public sector of it. But, and like you said, it's all in perspective, right?
All right. And Jonathan, I want to throw back to you because we've got Sharpay, I think it was Sharpay in the chat room, who is pointing out correctly that we're getting really close to the Nazi paradigm, because they've already said, well, if you support Apple, you support terrorists, you support drug dealers, you support pedophiles. It's one step away from saying, well, you supported Hitler. And that's, whenever I start to hear that, that just sets up all the alarms in my brain saying, oh, we're way out of the realm of common sense now. We're just getting scare tactics. What's your take on that? I mean, because it is getting kind of heated.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, what is it? Rule 43? I'm trying to remember. It slipped out of my head the minute you said
the chat room will find it. The one that you every argument goes to Hitler.
Exactly, right.
I forget what paradigm that is.
It does get to that level. But, it's interesting. Just to bring the tech element back in, as somebody pointed out earlier, right, the newer phones have a better layer of security. And back to the one-off question, the one argument from a technical side I can see for the one-off is, well, we'll do it for this one because it's the old version, but we can't do it on the new one. And therefore, you'll never get this again, right? And I think people are making that argument, and it's interesting. But, if we're going to make decisions about legal matters in the court of public opinion, which we already do on a regular basis. I suppose it's not very surprising that we're making technical decisions about that as well. In that same forum, right? We're saying, okay, well, the public thinks we should unlock it because it is only human to want the phone to be unlocked. But I don't know that the public understands all the deeper implications of that from a technology standpoint. What's actually being made to happen here, right? I mean, it's interesting that the comparison that was made last night too was if there was a secret locked in a safe, could the government force the safe maker to create a tool that would undo the safe without knowing the combination? Right? Could they do that? And what's interesting is that almost feels like it's less of a bad thing because it's made physical, right? And we tend to think physical things have limitations, but it's really the same question. Can I force this company to make a tool that will break something in their own security to satisfy the government's needs, right? Or do I have to make the government do the work themselves? I mean, that's the other aspect of this, right? We're basically forcing a company to create something bad, and we're forcing them to do it because we want to feel a little better, and we're forcing them to do it without any sort of compensation or thought towards what happens to them in the future, right? Those are all weird things to think about and start doing, right?
Right. Yeah, and actually, it harkens back to something that Cheever said. Oh, and by the way, is CR1 in the chat room? He reminded us it's Godwin's law.
Right.
That's the one that
Godwin's
everything
law.
goes. Yeah,
exactly. Yes.
But Cheever had it dead set in his blip because he was talking about the California representative who essentially said, "You are asking a private company to become an arm of the law, and we do not do that. That is against who we are in the United States." And in fact, if you remember, was it 6 weeks ago, the NSA and the FBI in front of Congress, they said, "Well, we're not asking you to make a law to force a backdoor to encryption. We're just really encouraging private companies to help us catch bad guys." And I think they recognized they were getting really close to that. Oh no, we're now asking Microsoft and Oracle to become part of the FBI, and they backed off. Now it seems as if, and I think Cheevert's spot on in his analysis, they realize this is a chance for them to get in there and get the public on their side where they didn't have it before. Cheebert, was that what you were trying to bring out, the fact that now they've got their cherry-picked case where obviously this is a bad guy, obviously we want the information on his phone, and obviously it will create precedent that will affect everybody else?
Yes, totally. But I should also point out one more thing. Tim Cook and Apple have to fight this because their brand depends on it.
Oh, yeah.
So if they do finally cave, saying we are, after all, an American company, blah, 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 however you want to spin it, they have done everything in their power to protect the shine on their brand to their stockholders. And it would come down to due diligence. Now, I don't like it, but if you have the force of the Department of Justice hammering on you, you're either going to pay an unprecedented fine and executives are going to go to jail, or Apple, absolute worst case, might say, okay, fine. That means we can't be an American company. We're moving to Canada. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But if you're going to talk extremes, that's an extreme, and Apple has enough cash to pull it off.
Right. Lou, let me bring you back into the conversation. I know we're having some sync problems, but I do want to get your voice on this. Again, you work for Microsoft, and Microsoft does have experience with securing devices, with securing networks. Do you think Microsoft will jump into the fray? I mean, they really have to, because this is Apple, but really this is going to be an attack on any company that offers any kind of security that at one point or another may need to be bypassed by a law enforcement agency. In fact, Microsoft has experience with it in the DOJ going after them for data kept in a Microsoft data center in Ireland, which is judicial extra jurisdiction out of the country. We'll say it that way. What's your take?
I'll put it in this particular perspective. So, like companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple, all these companies at some point need the help of the government, like FBI and so on, because potentially, let's say there is a potential breach, and they need the help of the FBI or the government to help them track these people down. And I think that at some point, if you turn that spin around, and they say, well, you know what, they're going to stop helping us if we stop helping them, then it might lead these companies to start helping more. And the other spin is that in the past we have seen companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple kind of band together and say no. So I think that potentially we'll start to see companies like that, even in this aspect, to say, hey, this is crossing the line. We build these devices in a way for a purpose, and there's no way we're going to cross that line. Otherwise, it'll ruin our business. So you might find that some of these companies will jump in.
All right, and that's really what we're hoping for, a unified front. Okay, so Jonathan, we've handled some of the technical, we've handled some of the theoretical. Let's get practical. What needs to happen? Obviously, this episode was pre-recorded, so we're talking a little bit about something that may have already happened. But what needs to happen over the next month for people to be educated about what's at stake, for companies to get behind or in opposition to Apple, for the DOJ to refine what it is that they're asking for?
I don't think we're going to know what really needs to happen until Apple makes their next move, right? I mean, as we just said, right, that we haven't quite crossed that line yet, and maybe this will air after the line gets crossed, but Apple needs to make the next move here. The Department of Justice has made their case crystal clear. We know what they want, how they want it delivered, and now it's really up to Apple to make a case, like a literal case, that this is an undue burden and that they shouldn't have to do it. Now, the question is, can they actually cross that mark? And if they can't, that's when things get really interesting, right? And I mean, if I was an iPhone user, I would make sure that I was on the later iPhones at that point, because now there's this real possibility that there's going to be this nasty thing out there. And you can wave hands and say, okay, it's going to be a one-time thing and it's never going to get out, and it's just software. And the notion that it's never going to get anywhere, that's hard to swallow, right? I mean, the things that have never supposed to have gotten everywhere have gotten everywhere over and over again, right? That's just the nature of technology. We've seen that happen over and over again. And so to think that they're going to create this nasty thing that's really important, that everyone knows they're creating, that some people are morally opposed to existing, and somehow it's not going to end up leaked for, one reason or another, that's a hard thing to believe. So I'm upgrading my phone if I'm the normal human. And I'm sure, it's funny, you named some names there, right? Oracle, Microsoft, others. There are some very large companies that I am sure are burning a lot of their retainer hours with their legal counsel, trying to figure out what they're going to do based on what Apple might do and what the Department of Justice might be able to make them do. Yeah. Because clearly they're all going to have a statement ready immediately once that move gets made.
I think you're right. And in fact, I think that started a long time ago for Microsoft and for Oracle and for every other big Valley company, big IT company. They've already seen the pressure. Several of them have gotten a security letter, which required them to do things that they were very uncomfortable with and they couldn't talk about. And so I'm sure they've got their teams of lawyers saying, okay, when, not if, but when the FBI comes at them, this is what we say. These are the stages. This is how long we can delay. This is the process that we go through. At least they're doing that.
Actually, another interesting thing here, it's partially because we live in this age where technology is viewed as magical, that this can all happen in the public sphere, because everyone just assumes that everything's possible from a technology standpoint. Again, Andrew Nash last night reminded me that back in the 70s, IBM actually faced a similar challenge from the U.S. government. And their answer was they actually handed over what the government wanted on a custom-made tape. that could only be read by one device that they only made one of, and then they gave it to the government and destroyed it. And so they met their burden, but only in the most like technical, restrictive sense, right? But they could never get away with that today, right? Because people wouldn't accept that. They would, they understand the technology is not like that anymore. But it's kind of interesting to see, same problems but different solutions because of where we are with technology.
So basically, that the only way that this works is if it's sort of the Dark Knight Rises solution to technology, where you built some monstrosity, you use it once, and then you destroy it because of your obligation to the betterment of mankind.
Well, technically, that was the Dark Knight, and Mr. Fox got to enter his name at the end and destroy the whole thing. Something tells me it's not going to be quite that cool or clean.
Probably not. Yeah. Well, folks, I think what we're coming up here, I think what we're realizing is you just need to stop putting your information on devices that can be opened. You have to stop trusting them. Don't put anything on your smartphone. In fact, I'm going to move back to my old flip phone that has nothing but an address book and a couple of phone numbers. I think that's where we are. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Unfortunately, folks, you've used up another hour listening to the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of the 10 NSA analysts who are listening to the show right now. I want to thank my panelists for being here, for making this discussion so lively and so fun. Jonathan, let's start with you. Tell us where they can find you, where they can find your company, and tell us also how you survived so many years of Catholic education.
That long one might take a long time to answer, but the first two are easy. They can find Lieberman software at liebsoft.com. That's liebsoft.com. And come on by and we'll show you how to protect those keys to the kingdom, as we talked about on the top. You can find me all over the place. I am such a hypocrite. I put my data everywhere. I gave up in the other direction, Padre. I basically thought, if they're going to get it anyway, why not have fun with it? So you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. And most of the time I'm Sander IAM. And that's how you're going to find me.
Fantastic. Jonathan, thank you again for spending time. I know it's a little late, and we really do appreciate the wisdom that you've brought to the Twilight Riot.
Thank you.
I also want to thank my co-hosts. Let's start with Mr. Lou Maresca. Lou, it's good to have you back. And for the folks who didn't watch the pre-show, we got to see a quick video of the new Maresca release. I want to say your product is much improved, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah, he's doing great.
And what's going on with you? Where can they find your work? And what fun things are you up to?
Fun things. So I'm always up to fun things. My son and I are always playing with Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, but my daily work is always found at crm.dynamics.com. We're always up for new releases. We're doing the releases twice a year, so check out that stuff. And you could always find me on Twitter, of course, at LouMM. Fantastic. And you'll see him in the chat room. When you do see him in the chat room, make sure to say hi. That's Lou Maresca, probably the nicest guy on the network. Go figure. Someone who isn't the nicest guy on the network is my good friend, Brian Chee. I know he's got a lot of qualities that drive people away, but being the geek in paradise is not one of them. Cheebert, what are you up to, my friend?
Well, by this time, when the show airs, I am hoping to have already had a conversation to go and build an autonomous sailboat. Is going to sensor the top 10 meters of the Pacific Ocean at Station Aloha, and I'm going to see if I can get a master's out of that.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. Actually, wait, can I come and help?
Oh, totally. I'm actually thinking this might be a really good excuse for me to go buy a hot wire CNC so I can carve the styrofoam for the hull.
Don't buy it. I just built one. I'll give you mine.
Okay, fine.
Cheebert, also, where do they find you?
I am at ADVNETLAB on Twitter. And I throw all kinds of weird and wacky stuff on there and would love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, thank you again for a fun show. I wouldn't want to do it without you. I also wouldn't want to do it without you. That's right. I'm reaching through the camera. I'm reaching through your speaker right now. I'm talking to the person who downloads our show each and every single week. If you didn't like Twilight, if you didn't download us, we wouldn't have been on for almost, 4 years now. And I got to say, it's been just absolutely fun. And we want to do something special for you. We want to make sure that you have a place where you can go to get our show notes, to get our past episodes, and to subscribe to This Week in Enterprise Tech. Just go to twit.tv/twite, look for the picture of the really fat person, and right below me, you'll find all of our episodes, and you'll also find a place so that you can get every episode in the format of your choice into the device of your choice. Audio version on your iPhone where it can't be accessed by the FBI because it's fully encrypted. You could get the video version on your iPad where it can be accessed because that thing still has a lot of bugs. Or you could just put the high-definition version on your Roku, your laptop, your PC, your desktop, and watch us in all our HD goodness. Also, don't forget that you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/PadreSJ. It is a really good place for you to go if you want to find out what we're going to be doing on every week, on This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's also where you can suggest guests and topics for future shows. I'd say roughly a third of our shows come directly from your input. Please, please keep it coming. Finally, thanks to everyone here who makes this show possible. Of course, that's Lisa and Leo Laporte. That is my super producer, Karsten, and my TD, the one, the only, the incomparable cranky hippo, Brian Burnett. Brian.
That's me.
You're a rock star, but how rock starry are you?
So rock star that we actually do a show together that you tend to forget. So
what was that? I forget. It's
Know How.
Oh,
Yes, that's the show.
We do that
where we build stuff, and we recently did those LED goggles that you made, the steampunk ones.
Yes.
As you can see, I was pretty blown away by them. So definitely check that out if you like to build stuff,
and if you like to blind yourself.
That too.
Yes, because those were very good at doing that.
If you want to see what the rainbow really looks like.
Yes. If you want to know what it looks like to live inside a rainbow, build yourself some of my steampunk goggles. Folks, until next time, I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, just reminding you that if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep quiet.